So, are you ready for some questions on public goods? Okay, remember, you have 3 lifelines, yeah? So, we've got 3 lifelines. Phone a friend, ask the audience, or 50-50. Yeah? So, let's play. So you can use either one of these 3 in any of the questions. And we're starting off with a $200 question here. Let's see. Okay. BBC programs are often referred to as being public goods. This is because A. BBC is financed by the public sector. B. BBC is the most popular broadcaster. C. The consumption of these programs is non-rivalrous. And D. There are external benefits from consuming BBC programs. Okay, so I'll give you 30 seconds. Have a think about it. And if you're ready, you can spam your answer in the chat. So you can just type A, B, C, or D in the chat. Or you can wait until I tell you the answer. Okay. I'll just stare out the window for a bit. Okay, are you ready? So, the answer is actually... it's C. The consumption of these programs is non-rivalrous. Okay, so again, as we looked at public goods, there are 2 characteristics, right? So number 1 is that it must be non-rivalrous, and the second characteristic is that it must be non-excludable. So it's got nothing to do with whether it's financed by the public sector, and it doesn't matter if it's the most popular broadcaster or whatever programs they are. So hopefully quite a few of you have got that question. Yeah? Ah, nice, yeah. Warda got it. Warda got C. Nice, good job. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Yeah. Okay. How much is this question? $2,000. Okay. An essential characteristic of a public good is that it is non-excludable. This means that A. Public goods are of equal benefit to all consumers. B. There is no opportunity cost in the provision of public goods. C. People could consume the good without paying for it. Or D. The government should not levy a tax for providing goods. Okay, so again, take 30 seconds, have a think about which one, and then you can tell me in the chat. So what does it mean to be non-excludable? Yeah, it means we're not including someone. And how are we not including someone? Okay, so now I've seen some answers. We've got Jay Wu saying that it's C. So is that our final answer? Is it C? Oh yeah, good job. Oh, Warda, better luck next time. So let me explain. So a characteristic of a public good is that it is non-excludable. Yeah. So non-excludable means that certain groups aren't able to access the good or use the good. Yeah. So whether public goods are of equal benefit to all consumers doesn't really matter. What's important, what it means by non-excludable, is that people cannot use the good unless they are paying for it. Yeah. So if it is non-excludable, people don't need to pay for it to access it. Because if you are paying for it, then essentially the good is excludable. Since we're excluding groups that don't have money, so that they won't be able to use the good. Yeah. Okay, so for B and D, so B doesn't really matter because there's no opportunity cost in the provision of public goods, because there are opportunity costs in providing these goods. Since some resources are given up in order to provide these public goods, so like benches or like roads, there is an opportunity cost in providing them. And then the government should not levy a tax for providing goods. So that doesn't make sense much, because when the government provides these public goods, they would want to levy a tax or like take money from us in order to help fund these public goods to help with the missing market, right? Okay, next one. Okay, $16,000. We're getting close to 1 million, when we still have 3 lifelines left. Yeah. Okay, so supposedly the questions should be getting harder and harder, but we'll see. Maybe you guys might find it easier and easier. Okay, one way to allocate road space in a congested city is to charge drivers to use roads. One reason why this policy will lead to more efficient resource allocation is because A. Incentives to build new roads will be higher. B. Only higher income drivers will choose to use the road. C. Road use would be rationed to drivers who benefit from it the most. And D. The government would raise lots of revenue from drivers. So again, take your time to read the available options and have a think about which response you would want to give. So there are some examples of this, like real life examples of this question. So like when you go through a tunnel, you might need to pay a certain fee or a certain toll levy in order to go through like a cross harbor tunnel, or like in some countries, right? So you kind of need to pay for the government. Okay, so this question is probably slightly trickier. So any responses or guesses? Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer then in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, thanks for following, Chloe. We're just about to give the answer to this question. So, what would the answer be? It's C. Okay, so let me explain. The reason that charging drivers to use road is good is because it would help to kind of exclude drivers that don't usually use it, and as a result, it would make things more efficient. So, in a sense, in like a free market, we have prices for different goods and resources, and as a result, these prices are essentially signals that help to show how much it is to produce the good, and these price signals help to signal to people that whether you are able to afford and use the good or not, right? So if we ration road use, and if we charge people that go into London, for example, a congestion charge whenever they drive there, then as a result, people who need to use the road most, or people who gain the most utility from using the road, would essentially have to pay. Whereas people who gains less utility from using the road won't use it. So that kind of like makes the economy slightly more efficient, or like the use of the road more efficient. So it's kind of like the people who need it the most will be able to benefit from it. Yeah. So it wouldn't be A, because incentives to build new roads would be higher. Charging them won't. It would potentially increase the incentive, but then it won't lead to a more efficient resource allocation. Yeah. Only higher income drivers would choose to use the road. This has nothing to do with efficiency. So C, road use will be rationed to drivers who benefited the most, which is like the reason that we've explained. And then the government would raise lots of revenue from drivers. So raising the revenue from drivers is good, but essentially it does not help improve the efficiency in the economy. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've got 2 more. Yes. We could have used 50-50 in a previous question. Okay. In 2016, a coastal flood defense scheme was completed in Kent to protect homes. A 30 million grant from the National Lottery paid for the scheme. The most likely reason for this grant is to ensure the A. exclusivity of Kent, B. provision of private good, C. provision of a public good, and D. rivalry of Kent. Okay, any ideas? Actually, this question might be more obvious than the previous one. The previous one is quite tricky. So this question is taken from Edexcel, Edexcel exam board, and the previous one was from the AQA exam board. So, okay, I shall give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No answers? Okay, of course, it's going to be C. Yes, you're correct. Order. Okay, it's C. I guess the way to think about it is it's because we've been covering public goods, right? So it's got to be like provision of a public good, but that's kind of like cheating. So let's have a look at the reasoning here. So if we recall, the reason that we want to have or identify the public goods is that we know that for public goods, since anyone can access it and nobody is willing to pay for it, nobody would provide these public goods. So by knowing which goods are public goods, the government will be able to help with the missing markets by providing these goods, right? So in this case, you can see that the government, or we're using money from the government, the National Lottery, in order to provide grant for this coastal flood defense scheme. Because the coastal flood defense scheme is a public good, yeah. And the reason that the flood defense scheme is a public good is because, first, it is non-excludable, because anyone in Kent will be able to benefit from it. So we can't exclude anyone in Kent from benefiting from the scheme. And secondly, it is non-rivalrous. So if the coastal flood defense scheme protects one person from flooding, it can also protect all the other people in Kent from flooding. So as a result, the coastal flood defense scheme is a public good. Yeah. And then in this case, it would be the provision of a public good. Okay, so the A and D is not very relevant, and then B is not a private good because the flood defense scheme is a public good. Okay, cool. So, final question. Are you ready for $1 million? Is it $1 million? Oh, we can use 50-50 in this. We've never used the 50-50. Okay. The tragedy of the commons can be applied to the fishing industry. What is the nature of this market failure? A. Overfishing, resulting in declining fish populations. B. The imposition of fishing quotas by the EU. C. The positive externalities associated with fish consumption. Or D. Third-party effects on dolphins as a result of tuna fishing. Okay, I see there are some answers in the screen. I'm just going to give you maybe 10 more seconds and see if everyone reaches the same conclusion. Okay, so it does seem that the majority tends to think that it's going to be A, yeah? Overfishing resulting in declining fish populations. So is this the correct answer? A. Oh, good job. So yeah, similar to the example that we covered in class, when there is overfishing, tragedy of the commons is kind of associated with overfishing, and that's because nobody owns the fish in international waters when it's outside of the country's national borders. Yeah. So as a result, any fishing boat from any country can just go out to these international waters and just keep fishing without any consequence. They don't need to pay for anything, and these fish populations aren't protected. And as a result, because these fishes in international waters are a type of public good that anyone can access and use, they would be abused, and this is what we call tragedy of the commons. Yeah. So yeah, good job. It is A. Okay, final question. I think final question. Yes. What? That's more than 1 million. Okay. 1.5 million. Yeah, 1.5 million. The lack of clearly defined property rights in a country is most likely to lead to A. Overuse of scarce natural resources. B. Overproduction of merit goods. C. Equality of private costs with social costs. Or D. An efficient allocation of resources. So this one might be more obscure, because we only mentioned property rights once in the presentation just now. I'll give you 10 more seconds maybe, and then you guys can pop the answer in the chat. So actually some of you might not be aware of like the other concepts like overproduction or like private cost and social cost. So don't worry about those because they aren't the correct answer. Okay, let me give you a 50-50 because we didn't use 50-50, did we? As like a lifeline. So what 50-50 does is that it would remove 2 wrong answers. So I'll tell you that it's not B and it's not C. Okay, I've seen some answers popping up now. It's either A or D. 50% chance for $1.5 million. Okay, I think it's time to review the answer. Are you ready? So, the majority thinks it's A. Is it correct? Overuse of scarce natural resources. It's D. Oh, wait. No, it's not D. It's A. So the lack of clearly defined property rights in the country is most likely to lead to A. Overuse of scarce natural resources. So it's not D because it's the lack of clearly defined property rights. Yeah. So they're saying that if we don't have property rights, like the fish stocks example or like the overfishing example, if we don't have laws protecting those fishes, then we would have an overuse or an abuse of these natural resources that are so important to us. So if they don't have the lack word, so having clearly defined property rights in a country, then would most likely to lead to an efficient allocation of resources. But in this case, because it's a lack, then it's A. Okay, any questions so far? If there aren't any questions so far, then we're going to take just another quick break. And then afterwards, we'll be back. And then we'll just have a general Q&A session. So economics questions, you can just